It was just another busy morning in the high-rise office building. Nathan, a janitor, was doing his usual rounds, pushing his cleaning cart along the long hallways. His job was not easy, but he did it with pride. He had 2 kids at home and worked hard to provide for them. The building's office floors were always spotless, thanks to him, and Nathan took pride in that. He had a simple routine and didn't ask for much. He was polite to everyone and kept his head down, quietly going about his work. But that morning was different. Vanessa, a wealthy and confident businesswoman, stepped into the hallway. She had just finished a meeting with one of the top clients in the building, and as usual, she walked with an air of superiority. Her expensive heels clicked loudly against the floor as she strutted down the hallway, talking loudly on her phone. She wasn't looking where she was going, and as she passed Nathan, her elbow brushed against his cleaning cart. "Watch where you're going," Vanessa snapped, looking at him as though he was the one who had made the mistake. Her sharp voice made Nathan stop in his tracks. He looked up from the floor, meeting her cold eyes. "I'm sorry, Mom," Nathan said politely, not wanting to cause a scene. "I'll be more careful." But Vanessa wasn't satisfied with his apology. She stood there, glaring at him for a moment. "You people always make a mess," she said, sneering. "Can't even keep this place clean." Nathan felt a sting in her words, but he didn't respond. He knew better than to argue. He had learned that people like Vanessa often look down on others, especially those who work jobs like his. He just wanted to finish his work and go home to his kids. Vanessa, however, wasn't done. She leaned closer to Nathan, still frowning. "You shouldn't even be here, doing this job. You should be cleaning up the streets where you belong." Nathan stood still, holding back his anger. He had faced racist remarks before, but they still hurt every time. He had learned to ignore them for the most part. But this time, something in him snapped. He wanted to say something, to defend himself, but he also knew that reacting wouldn't solve anything. "Sorry again, Mom," Nathan said, keeping his voice calm. "I'll make sure to be more careful." Vanessa huffed, clearly not satisfied, and stormed off down the hallway, her heels clicking louder as she walked away. Nathan stood there for a moment, taking a deep breath. The words she had said to him echoed in his mind. He had always tried to be the bigger person, never engaging with people like Vanessa. But today, something felt different. The disrespect, the racism, the way she treated him like he didn't belong. It hurt. And it wasn't just about him. It was about how people like Vanessa treated others every day. Nathan shook his head, pushing the cart forward. He wasn't sure how or when, but he knew one thing. The next time he saw her, things would be different. She had bullied the wrong person today. Nathan's life was not easy, but he always found ways to make it work. As he continued to clean the office building each day, his mind often wandered to his children at home. He was a proud father of 2, a boy and a girl, and he did everything he could to give them the life they deserved. His kids were the reason he worked hard every day, no matter how tiring the job was. Nathan wasn't always a janitor. He had once been a teacher, a job that he loved. He had taught middle school for several years, helping students grow and learn. But life had other plans. Due to budget cuts, Nathan had lost his teaching job. His heart had broken when he had to leave his students behind, but he didn't give up. He found another job, cleaning the offices in a tall building downtown. It wasn't the job he had dreamed of, but it paid the bills and kept a roof over his family's head. Despite the change in his life, Nathan remained a good man. He was kind to everyone he met, always greeting people with a smile. His coworkers admired him for his patience and calm attitude, especially when dealing with difficult people. They often told him that no matter what happened, Nathan always did his best to stay positive and keep things professional. Still, Nathan couldn't shake the feeling that people looked down on him. He had noticed the way some people ignored him or treated him like he was invisible. Some of them were kind enough, but others were dismissive, acting as if his job meant nothing. It wasn't something Nathan liked to think about, but he couldn't ignore it forever. He remembered the day he had first started working at the building. The manager had shown him around, pointing out the places he needed to clean. As they passed by the offices, Nathan noticed how many people were dressed in suits, talking business, looking powerful and important. He had felt small in comparison, but he reminded himself that he was doing important work. Keeping the building clean meant that the people who worked there could focus on their jobs without distraction, and that was something to be proud of. Over time, Nathan had learned to ignore the looks and the whispers. He focused on his work and kept to himself. He didn't need anyone's approval. What mattered most was his children, his son, who loved sports, and his daughter, who had dreams of becoming a doctor. They were his motivation, and he would do anything to make sure they had a better life than he had growing up. But that day, when Vanessa had confronted him in the hallway, something changed. Her rude comments hurt, but they also reminded him of how far he had come. He had worked hard to get where he was, and he wouldn't let anyone make him feel less than he was. As Nathan continued his work, he began to think about what he could do next. He didn't want to just let Vanessa's words go. He felt a strong urge to stand up for himself, not just for him, but for everyone who had been treated the way he had. He wasn't the type of person to seek out conflict, but sometimes standing up for yourself was the only way to make things right. The more he thought about it, the more determined he became. He knew he had to do something about the way he had been treated. The next time he saw Vanessa, things would be different. Vanessa was used to getting what she wanted. Growing up in a wealthy family, she had always been surrounded by luxury. From the finest clothes to expensive cars, she had never known what it was like to struggle. Her life was one of comfort, filled with dinners at fancy restaurants and vacations to exotic places. She worked as a senior executive in a large company, where she made important decisions that affected many people's lives. To her, the world revolved around money, power, and status. At work, Vanessa often carried an air of confidence, almost to the point of arrogance. She believed that because of her position, she deserved the best of everything. People who worked under her, especially those in service roles, were often treated with little respect. She never paid much attention to the janitors, cleaners, or anyone else she considered beneath her. They were just part of the background, people whose job it was to make her world easier. She didn't bother learning their names, and she certainly didn't see them as equals. Her attitude toward Nathan had been no different. That day when she had bumped into him in the hallway, she didn't see a man working hard to support his family. All she saw was a janitor doing a job she felt was beneath her. She didn't stop to think about his life, his challenges, or the way he carried himself with dignity. All that mattered to Vanessa was her own world, where people like Nathan didn't have a place. She had spent years building her career, working long hours, and pushing herself to the top of the corporate ladder. She often looked down on people who weren't part of her world. In her mind, if someone was cleaning the office while she was running the company, it was because they had failed at life. She didn't understand that hard work came in many forms, and every job had value. That morning, when Nathan had apologized to her, Vanessa had brushed him off without a second thought. She had been in a rush, distracted by a phone call, and frustrated by the small inconvenience of him accidentally bumping into her cart. Her angry outburst wasn't just about the cart. It was a reflection of her impatience and the way she saw the world. People like Nathan were meant to stay in the background, invisible and quiet, while people like her got the spotlight. As the day went on, Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling of superiority she had felt in that moment. She knew the building manager would back her up. After all, she was an important client. Nathan, in her mind, was just a worker, someone easily replaceable. She had already planned to make sure he would be spoken to about his mistake. That would teach him a lesson. But what Vanessa didn't realize was that she had just crossed a line with the wrong person. She had no idea that Nathan wasn't the type to back down. She didn't know that, in his quiet way, he was already making plans to handle things differently. The more Vanessa thought about her complaint against Nathan, the more confident she became in her belief that she was right. and he was wrong. What Vanessa didn't see coming was how her treatment of Nathan would eventually change her. How the very man she had dismissed would teach her something she would never forget. Nathan had tried to ignore the incident with Vanessa, but it weighed on him more than he wanted to admit. The harsh words she had thrown at him echoed in his mind every time he picked up his cleaning supplies or wiped down a desk. He had always believed in staying calm and professional, no matter what others said. But something inside him was beginning to change. He couldn't just let this go. Over the next few days, Vanessa's behavior toward him became even more noticeable. She would pass him in the hallway and never make eye contact, as if he were invisible. On one occasion, as she walked by, she muttered under her breath, "I can't believe I have to share this building with people like him." Nathan had overheard her, and though he tried to stay focused on his work, the insult stung deeply. The building manager, Mr. Collins, had spoken to Nathan a few days after the incident. He was a kind man who had worked in the building for years, and he'd heard about Vanessa's complaint. But when Mr. Collins spoke to Nathan, he made it clear that it was just a misunderstanding. "I don't think you did anything wrong, Nathan," Mr. Collins had said, his voice calm and reassuring. "But you know how some people are. Just make sure you keep a low profile around Miss Vanessa. She's an important client, and we don't want any trouble." Nathan nodded politely, but he could sense the underlying message. His feelings were mixed. Part of him felt relieved that the manager understood the situation, but another part of him was frustrated. Why should he have to keep his head down and avoid confrontation? He had done nothing wrong. Nathan's coworkers could sense his growing frustration. They had noticed the tension between him and Vanessa and expressed their sympathy. "Don't let her get to you," they would say. "You're better than her." But the more Nathan thought about it, the more he realized he couldn't just ignore what had happened. Vanessa's treatment of him wasn't just about one comment or one incident. It was about the way she treated people like him every day, people she saw as inferior. He didn't want to stay silent anymore. He wasn't just going to let her walk all over him. One afternoon, Nathan was cleaning the lobby when Vanessa arrived, rushing past him to get to the elevator. She didn't even glance in his direction, but Nathan saw the same look of superiority on her face that had bothered him so much before. She was too busy with her phone, too focused on her own world to notice the people around her. But that was it. Nathan couldn't stay silent anymore. He took a deep breath, walked over to her, and said, "Ms. Vanessa, can I speak with you for a moment?" Vanessa stopped, her eyebrows raised in surprise. She had clearly expected Nathan to just continue cleaning without a word. "What is it?" she asked, her tone sharp. "I just wanted to let you know that your words the other day were hurtful," Nathan said, his voice calm but firm. "I try to do my job with dignity, and I don't think it's right to treat people the way you did." Vanessa's eyes widened, and for a moment, she didn't speak. She was taken aback by Nathan's directness. But instead of backing down, Nathan stood tall, looking her in the eye. "I'm just trying to do my job, Mom," he continued. "And I believe everyone deserves respect, no matter what their job is." The silence between them grew heavy. Vanessa stood frozen for a moment, then, without a word, turned and walked toward the elevator. But Nathan didn't feel defeated. He felt proud. He had said what needed to be said. That moment was a turning point for Nathan. He had made it clear that he wasn't going to let anyone treat him or anyone else with disrespect. And he knew that this wouldn't be the last time he had to stand up for himself. But one thing was certain. He had found his voice, and he wasn't going to let anyone silence him again. After the brief confrontation with Vanessa, Nathan felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of him was proud for speaking up, for telling her exactly how her words had affected him. But another part of him still felt uneasy. He had expected something more from Vanessa, maybe an apology or at least an acknowledgement of his feelings. But instead, she had simply walked away, as if he didn't matter. Nathan knew Vanessa wasn't going to change overnight. He couldn't expect her to suddenly become a kind and respectful person, just because he had spoken up. But he also knew he wasn't the only one who had felt the sting of her words. There were others in the building who were treated the same way. People who worked hard, but were often dismissed or ignored. As Nathan continued his work, he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. He knew he had to do something more, something that would make a real difference. He had spent his whole life keeping his head down, doing the work no one else wanted to do. But this time, it was different. He wasn't just a janitor. He was a man with a voice, and he was going to use it. That evening, as he cleaned the hallway near the main conference room, Nathan came up with a plan. He knew that Vanessa's company was hosting an important charity event the next week, a gathering of business leaders, clients, and top executives. Nathan had heard the rumors. Vanessa was one of the key speakers. She would be giving a speech about her company's success and the importance of giving back to the community. This was his chance. Nathan wasn't looking for revenge. He didn't want to make her feel bad or embarrass her, but he wanted to make a point, one that would show Vanessa and everyone else in the building that people like him deserve respect, no matter their job. Nathan believed that real change would come when people like Vanessa were forced to face the consequences of their actions. If she could speak in front of an audience and talk about fairness and equality, perhaps she would finally understand the impact of her words. Over the next few days, Nathan spent his time preparing. He knew he wasn't a public speaker, but he didn't need to be. He just needed to be honest. He started writing down his thoughts, jotting down the words that had been on his mind ever since that morning. Vanessa had insulted him. His goal wasn't to attack her, but to make her think about how she treated others. He wanted to show her how her words could hurt, and how much power people like her had over the lives of others, even if they didn't realize it. When the day of the charity event arrived, Nathan felt a mix of nerves and determination. He knew this was risky. He could easily be dismissed as just another worker trying to make a scene, but he couldn't let fear stop him. He had made up his mind. This was the right thing to do. Nathan arrived early at the building, and he carefully took his place at the back of the room where the event was being held. The guests began arriving, dressed in their finest clothes. He noticed Vanessa was busy greeting people, her usual confident smile on display. But today, he wasn't going to let her walk by without addressing the hurt she had caused. When the time was right, Nathan made his way to the front of the room. His heart pounded in his chest, but he stood tall and walked straight toward Vanessa, who was in the middle of a conversation with a few important clients. "Ms. Vanessa," he said calmly but firmly, catching her attention. She turned to face him, looking surprised but not yet understanding the seriousness of the moment. Nathan took a deep breath and spoke the words he had prepared. "Can I speak with you for a moment?" he asked. The room fell silent as Nathan stood in front of Vanessa, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never imagined himself confronting someone like this, especially someone as powerful and confident as her. But today was different. He wasn't just going to let her walk away from what had happened. He had found his voice, and he was determined to use it. Vanessa looked at him, her eyebrows raised in surprise. She was caught off guard by his approach, but her professional smile quickly returned. She glanced at the people around her, then back at Nathan, clearly unsure of what he wanted. "Yes," she said, her tone cool, but there was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. "I just wanted to speak with you about something." Nathan began, his voice steady but firm. "About the way you spoke to me last week." Vanessa's smile faltered for a moment, and she glanced around the room, clearly uncomfortable. She didn't like being challenged in front of others, especially not by someone she considered beneath her. But Nathan wasn't backing down. "I've been working in this building for a long time," Nathan continued, "and I've always done my best. But when you spoke to me the other day, it wasn't just about the cart. It was about how you see people like me, people who clean up after others. You made me feel small, like I didn't matter." Vanessa's face tightened, and for a moment, it seemed like she might snap at him. But Nathan wasn't finished. He had a message to deliver, and he was going to make sure she heard it. "I don't know if you realize this," he said, "but your words carry weight. They have an impact on the people you speak to, whether you mean them to or not. I'm just a janitor, yes. But that doesn't mean I don't have value. It doesn't mean I don't deserve respect. And I don't think anyone, no matter their job, should be treated the way you treated me." There was a long pause. Vanessa seemed to be processing his words, her eyes narrowing slightly. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but Nathan raised his hand to stop her. "I'm not here to fight," he said calmly. "I'm not here to make you feel bad. I just want you to understand that treating people with kindness and respect matters. It's easy to forget that when you're at the top, when everything's going well. But those of us who are working hard to support our families don't have that luxury. We have to work for everything we have, and we deserve the same respect as anyone else." The room was still silent. Vanessa stood there, her smile gone, her expression unreadable. Nathan could feel the eyes of the others in the room on them. He wasn't sure if Vanessa was going to apologize or if she was going to brush him off again. Either way, he had said what needed to be said. Finally, Vanessa took a deep breath. She glanced around at the people watching, then back at Nathan. Her voice was quieter now, less sharp. "I didn't realize," she said slowly, her tone softer than before. "I'm sorry for what I said to you. I didn't mean to hurt you." Nathan nodded, accepting her apology. "It's not just about saying sorry," he replied. "It's about treating people with respect every day, no matter who they are or what they do." For the first time, Vanessa seemed to truly listen. There was a small shift in her expression, a moment of understanding. She seemed to be thinking about the words Nathan had said. As the room began to fill with murmurs and the event continued, Nathan turned to leave. He hadn't expected a perfect resolution, but he had planted a seed. Maybe, just maybe, Vanessa would think twice before treating someone like Nathan, or anyone else, like they didn't matter. And for Nathan, that was enough. The days after the conversation between Nathan and Vanessa passed by slowly, but something had shifted in the air. For Vanessa, the encounter had been uncomfortable at first, but it had stayed with her. The words Nathan had spoken echoed in her mind, especially when she found herself in situations where she interacted with people in service roles. Each time, she remembered the way she had treated him and the impact of her words. At first, she tried to dismiss the guilt. She was busy with work, with meetings, with her career. It was easy to brush off those feelings, but it wasn't so easy anymore. The more she thought about Nathan, the more she realized how much he had been right. She hadn't meant to hurt him. She hadn't meant to belittle him, but she had, and now it was making her question everything. One morning, as she walked into the building for another busy day, she noticed the janitors hard at work. They were sweeping, cleaning windows, and making sure everything was spotless. For the first time, Vanessa really saw them. She watched as one of them, an older man with kind eyes, picked up trash from the floor and smiled at a coworker. He didn't act as if his job was small or unimportant. It was just a job, yes, but it was important to him, just as her job was to her. Vanessa walked past him, but this time, she didn't just pass by. She smiled at him and said, "Thank you for your hard work." The man looked up, surprised, and smiled back. "You're welcome," he said, his voice warm and genuine. For a moment, Vanessa stopped and thought about how simple it was to acknowledge someone's effort. It didn't take much, just a few kind words. That small exchange made her realize that she had never really thought about the people who worked behind the scenes, the ones who kept the place clean, who made sure the lights were on, and who did everything to ensure the office ran smoothly. Later that day, Vanessa found herself in a meeting with a few of her colleagues. She had been preparing to present a proposal, but her mind kept wandering back to Nathan and the conversation they had. After the meeting, she approached her manager, asking about the janitorial team and how long they had been working in the building. She wanted to know more about them, about their stories. She felt embarrassed to admit it, but she had never paid much attention to their lives before. Her manager looked at her with a slight smile. "I'm glad you asked. They're all part of the team, just like anyone else. They're hardworking, and we're lucky to have them here." That night, after work, Vanessa sat down and thought about her actions. She realized that Nathan had taught her something valuable, something she had never fully understood before. Respect was a small thing, but it had a big impact. She had been so focused on her own world that she had forgotten to look around and see the people who helped her succeed. The next morning, Vanessa made a decision. She would do more than just apologize to Nathan. She would make sure that the people around her felt valued and respected. She started by going to the office kitchen, where Nathan was cleaning. He was wiping down the countertops, moving quickly and efficiently. When she approached him, he looked up, surprised to see her again. "Good morning, Nathan," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you before. I didn't understand how much my words hurt, but I do now." Nathan looked at her for a moment, his expression calm. Then he nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Vanessa. I appreciate that." Vanessa smiled, and for the first time, she truly meant it. She had learned an important lesson, one that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Respect wasn't just about how much money you made or what title you held. It was about seeing the people around you and acknowledging the effort they put into their work. And Nathan, in his quiet way, had taught her exactly that. After her conversation with Nathan, Vanessa couldn't stop thinking about the lesson she had learned. It wasn't just about being polite to the janitors or the staff at the office. It was about understanding that every job, no matter how small it might seem, had value. She began to realize that respect wasn't something you gave only to people who had power or money. It was something you gave to everyone, regardless of their position. The next day, Vanessa came into the office with a new mindset. She took a different approach as she moved through the building. She smiled at the workers who greeted her and made a conscious effort to thank them for their work. Whether it was the receptionist who answered the phone or the security guard who greeted her at the door, Vanessa made sure to show her appreciation. Her coworkers noticed the change in her attitude. Some of them raised an eyebrow at first, surprised by her newfound warmth. They had always seen her as someone focused only on business, someone who was always in a rush and never had time for small talk. But now, Vanessa was stopping to chat with everyone, asking how their day was going or complimenting them on their work. One afternoon during lunch, Vanessa sat in the break room with some of the cleaning staff. She had noticed that they often ate in silence, their eyes focused on their food as if they were trying to stay out of the way of the more important people in the office. But today, Vanessa sat down with them, and they welcomed her without hesitation. "Thank you for all that you do for us," she said, looking around the table. "I realize I've never really taken the time to thank you properly." The workers looked surprised, but their faces softened as they smiled back at her. "You're welcome, Ms. Vanessa," one of them said. "We're just doing our jobs." "I know," Vanessa replied. "But I want you to know that your work is noticed, and it's important. You make this place better for everyone." The workers exchanged glances, clearly moved by her words. Vanessa could see that they weren't used to being treated this way, and she realized how little respect they had been shown in the past. She was determined to change that. As the days went on, Vanessa made a habit of speaking with the janitors, security guards, and maintenance workers. She learned more about their lives, their families, and their dreams. She learned that one of the janitors had a son who wanted to be a doctor, and another had a daughter who loved painting. These were people with hopes and dreams just like her, and she had never taken the time to see them as more than their jobs. One day, as Vanessa walked into the building, she was greeted by Nathan, who was busy cleaning the lobby. He smiled at her, and Vanessa smiled back. There was no longer any tension between them. She had apologized, and now she was trying to make a real change in how she treated others. "Good morning, Nathan," she said warmly. "I wanted to thank you again for opening my eyes. I've been trying to treat everyone here with the respect they deserve." Nathan gave her a nod and a small smile. "I appreciate that, Ms. Vanessa. It means a lot." Vanessa felt a sense of peace knowing that she had done the right thing. It wasn't just about being polite or saying the right words. It was about changing the way she saw people and understanding that every person, no matter their job, deserved respect and kindness. Her actions didn't go unnoticed. The office atmosphere shifted. People began to treat one another with more kindness and consideration. Vanessa had learned a valuable lesson, not only about respect, but about the power of empathy and understanding. And as for Nathan, he was proud to have played a part in helping her see the value of every person's work, no matter how small or large it seemed. Vanessa's transformation wasn't just about her. It was about everyone around her. And that was a change worth celebrating. As the weeks passed, the office atmosphere began to change. Vanessa's shift in attitude was not just something she felt. It had a noticeable impact on everyone around her. People who had once avoided each other started greeting one another in the hallways. Conversations in the break room became warmer, and the once quiet janitors and maintenance staff were now treated with respect and kindness. Vanessa didn't just stop at saying the right words. She made a real effort to build relationships with those who had previously been ignored or overlooked. She learned about the lives of the cleaning staff, the security guards, and the maintenance workers. She knew that one janitor, Carlos, had been working there for 15 years, and that another, Sarah, had just finished her studies to become a nurse. Vanessa even learned about the struggles and joys that came with their jobs, and it opened her eyes in a way she hadn't expected. One day, after several months of making an effort, Vanessa received a surprise. The building manager, Mr. Collins, approached her as she was leaving the office. "Vanessa, I wanted to speak with you for a moment," he said, his tone warm. "I've noticed the changes you've made in how you treat people here. It's been a positive shift, and I just wanted to thank you for it." Vanessa was taken aback. She had never expected anyone to notice. It had started as a personal change, something she felt was important, but hearing Mr. Collins acknowledge it made her feel proud. "It's the least I can do," she said, smiling. "I've learned a lot from my interactions with the staff here. Everyone deserves respect, and I didn't realize how much I had been missing before." Mr. Collins nodded. "It's clear that people are feeling more comfortable now. There's a sense of unity that wasn't there before." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with appreciation. She hadn't realized how much her small changes had affected the overall atmosphere of the building. The once divided spaces were now filled with a sense of cooperation and mutual respect. And as for the janitors and workers, they had noticed her efforts too. One afternoon, as Vanessa was walking out of the building, she bumped into Nathan again. He was on his usual cleaning route, but this time, she didn't just walk past him. "Hi, Nathan," she said with a smile. "I just wanted to thank you again for opening my eyes. You've taught me something I'll never forget." Nathan gave her a genuine smile in return. "I'm glad to hear that, Ms. Vanessa. It's about seeing people for who they really are, not just their jobs." Vanessa nodded. "You're right, and I'll make sure I never forget that again." Nathan looked at her, then nodded slowly. "It's easy to forget when things are going well for you, but you've taken a step to make sure that people like me don't feel invisible. That's a big thing." Vanessa smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace. It hadn't been easy to change her mindset, but it had been worth it. She had learned the importance of respect, not just for those who were in powerful positions, but for everyone, no matter their job. She had learned that respect wasn't just something you gave when it was convenient. It was something you gave to everyone, all the time. As she left the building that evening, Vanessa felt like a different person. She had discovered that real strength didn't come from power or money. It came from how you treated others. And as for Nathan, he had made sure she would never forget the importance of kindness, respect, and understanding. Vanessa looked up at the sky as she walked to her car, feeling grateful. She had learned a valuable lesson, and now she would carry it with her always. Respect was the key to a better world, and she was ready to share that lesson with others, just as Nathan had shared it with her.